Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Latched Mama podcast. Melissa here. It is a beautiful 60-degree day in February here in Richmond, Virginia, and I am super excited about it. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the hottest topics in our Facebook group, and we get questions about all the time, which is sleep. How to get it, how to maintain it, and how to get your babies to close their eyes for a little while. So, stay tuned. You're listening to Latched Mama Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Wirt, busy mom of 6 and owner of LatchedMama.com. Join us each week as we talk about pregnancy, breastfeeding, postpartum, and all things motherhood. All right, today I am joined by Diana Flutie, who is a sleep consultant and owner of Big Sky Lullaby, which is a company that helps us get our little ones to rest a little bit. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We always like to talk about sleep, although it is somewhat of a controversial topic, especially kind of in the attachment parenting world. But I think that there's definitely science to be learned behind it, and there's definitely things that we can explore. I know from my experience, I am completely different with baby number 6 when it comes to sleep than I was with baby number 1. And I've learned a lot. So I think it's an important conversation to have. So thank you.
Yes,
thank you for being here. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and how you kind of found your way to the world of sleep training or the sleep consulting?
Yes, I would love to. So I started my business. I launched my business 8 years ago.
Okay.
And the way that I got into it is I had a son. And when I was pregnant, I had conversations with other moms, just like we all do, about, diapering or feeding or clothing, and, never sleep. Sleep never came up, and it just wasn't something I ever really thought of. And I had been a nanny. I'd worked in daycares, and so I thought I had it all figured out, and I would be fine. And then I had my son, and he started crying the second he was born. And he didn't stop, and he also did not sleep. And we lived in a new area where we didn't have family and friends close by, and so it was just a very desperate situation where my son literally did not sleep more than 2 hours in a row.
I had one of those. That was my number 1 too.
Yeah, and it's no joke.
Terrible. It's hard. It's so hard.
It's so hard. It's so hard to function and to know what to do and how to fix it, and you feel like you're failing, and it's overwhelming. And one day I was out in public, can imagine what I looked like, and somebody came up to me and said, you can hire somebody to help. And I was so confused. I was like, do you mean a nanny? And she said, no, an infant sleep specialist or a child sleep consultant. And I was like, what is that? And so she handed me a business card, and I called the woman on the card, and we spoke that night. And she said, for this amount of money, your son is going to be sleeping through the night, taking his naps, falling asleep easy with no crying. And I thought, that's impossible. How on earth could that happen? But I really had nothing to lose at that point. Yeah. And so purchased her program. My son's dad came home, and we started the program. And the first night, so my son had a very strong eat-sleep association because just like a lot of new moms, I thought I was supposed to feed him to sleep.
Yep.
And so the first night was rough. It really was. My son's dad tried to call our sleep consultant at 3 a.m. and fire her. And I was like, no, that's not how this works. We've already paid her. And the second night was rough, but better than the first, honestly. And then the third night, my son slept 12 hours through the night.
It's remarkable if anybody has ever gone through the process of trying to encourage your children to learn how to sleep, how quickly it happens and how quickly it's almost like the body wants it to happen.
Yes.
You know?
And that still shocks parents till this day. It almost still shocks me.
Yeah.
We'll have a child that night 1, they sleep through the night. And it's just because that's what their body, really
what all
needed.
of our bodies need to do. And it's almost like you have all of these firing neurons. And I'm sure you can tell me a little bit about the science behind it. And then suddenly you just line them up,
right?
And it all just starts to click. And then they get in this cycle where like they're on a schedule, or they're actually like happy when they're supposed to be happy, and they're not tired, and it's a little bit less, I feel like, and we can, like I said, I'll let you tell I'll let you tell everybody how this works, but it's almost like everything becomes easier. Like the weight of motherhood becomes a little bit easier, because more likely than not, you're going to get a break at the end of the day. And more likely than not, you're at least going to get a few hours where nobody's touching you, or like they're actually sleeping and you can breathe and you can focus on hobbies or your partner or whatever like that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And, for example, before we went through the program, my son's father and we would sleep in shifts. And so my shift ended at 1 a.m. And if he was not out of the bedroom at 1:02, I'm like texting him, like, it's your turn.
Yeah.
But we sat on the couch and held our son and slept in shifts. And after we sleep trained, my son fell asleep every night at 6, and we knew he was going to sleep soundly through the night until 6 a.m. And it life-changing for our relationship.
Absolutely.
I mean, we look at each other and it's like, well, now what? Like, we can order dinner, we can rent a movie. I mean, it was just, and knowing that our son is peacefully sleeping, getting the sleep he needed, really was life-changing for us as parents as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting, because I look at the comments in the Facebook group sometimes, and I always say that my job will be done in terms of like content and supporting moms and stuff when moms everywhere realize that they're not going to be able to bring their newborn home and lay them on their back in a crib, and their newborn's just going to go to sleep.
Right.
Like, because I think that that's what we set up in the United States, and so much like build this beautiful nursery and get this perfect crib, and make sure, you get an organic mattress and the best sheets, and you're going to come home and you're going to put your baby in that swaddle, and you're going to put them on their back in their crib, and they're going to go to sleep, and then you're just going to look at them and you're going to marvel at how beautiful they are. Yeah, it doesn't happen like that for most people.
Right. And the key is that it happens for some, which throws us off.
Absolutely.
It absolutely throws us off.
Tell you, I've had 6, and it has not, maybe 5 or 6 minutes. I think probably by number 4, I just stopped trying, because I just knew that it was much easier to do whatever we were going to do for those first few months before we started, encouraging them to kind of learn a little bit more about, their body and what works for them.
Right. And so that's the exception. So the rule would be that it's, you have to teach your child to sleep. Yeah. And so, like what I was saying before, when I was pregnant and you have conversations with moms about various things, it's never, well, what sleep training method are you going to use, or what, how are you going to set up the nursery so that it's, the best environment for sleep? Those conversations I think should be had more and more.
Absolutely.
Surrounding
It's
sleep.
Just like the breastfeeding conversations, like,
Exactly.
What have you done to prepare, or even birth? Like have you thought about how your baby's going to enter this world?
Exactly.
It's the important conversations that I think if you start to connect them together, we will probably have less of like a maternal mental health issue in the United States, because they all fall together.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about kind of the program, kind of science behind it, just for the for people who are sitting there tired, have a 7-8 month old, wonder if they're ever going to sleep again. Talk a little bit about the body and how it works, and why it's important to kind of encourage your kids to actually learn how their bodies work.
Right. And so
You're fine.
What we want to do is we want to teach children how to sleep independently. So that's the main concept behind sleep training. When I was learning, we use the term sleep changing, because that's what we're doing. We're just changing things. And so what happens is that when we put our child to sleep, so let's say we rock them to sleep, feed them to sleep, bounce them to sleep, and then we lay them down, they don't get the opportunity to learn how to fall asleep on their own. And until we give the child the opportunity to do that, they're never able to do it, right? Because they've never had the opportunity. So if you're constantly putting them to sleep, when they wake up, they think that that's how you fall back to sleep. I need intervention from mom and dad, whether it's bouncing, rocking, feeding, whatever it is. That's how I go back to sleep. So I've got to lay here, cry so they know I'm awake. I have to wait for them to come in so that I can go back to sleep. And so what we do in the program is we're teaching the child that that's not the case and that they are able to put themselves to sleep. However, the main idea behind that is to set them up for success. So what I mean by that is making sure all of the elements are lined up and in place at the same time. So you need to make sure that the sleep environment is set up properly. It needs to be pitch black. We need to have white noise. All of those distractions, like anything that glows in the dark, lights up, mobiles, anything that plays music, all of those are distractions and need to be removed from the sleep environment. Also, we need to make sure that we are controlling our wake periods during the day, because once we have an overtired child, they're either not going to fall asleep or they're going to fight sleep for a really long time. And so when they reach the overtired state, their body is no longer producing or getting ready to produce melatonin, which is the sleep hormone. It now releases cortisol, which is our stress hormone. Yep. And, so you hear people use the term, I just got a second wind. Well, that's what's happening to your child. They just got a second wind and they're not going to sleep now if we don't control those wake periods. So it's about setting up the sleep environment, controlling the wake periods so that they don't enter the overtired state, and then finding a sleep training strategy that meets your parenting style, that you can be consistent with, and that everybody in the family is comfortable implementing.
And we're covering this topic knowing that, people feel very passionately about whether babies should be next to mommy, whether, babies should ever cry or whether their needs should always be met. And I go back and forth. Like I said, I have 6 kids and I've done different things with like each of them. And I have an age where I will not even consider it. I will not consider letting them cry it out. I will not consider, not going to them and attending to them, when they need it. But then we reach a certain age where it's almost like we have a mutual understanding at that point that, I'm not going anywhere, but they truly need to learn how to settle themselves because it's a skill and it's a tool that they're going to need to use for the rest of their life.
Right.
And I told people, I've said this a few times on the podcast, before my latest was born in September, I was getting more sleep with 5 kids than I had gotten with 1 or 2 or 3, just because we had implemented everything that we had learned by the other ones to the point where, apart from a sick child or a bad dream every once in a while, I was getting a full 8 hours of sleep. Right. And I knew that it was going to be life-changing when he came, just because we had kind of mastered what worked well for our family.
Right.
So I think it's important, as we talk about these things, for people to also remember that it doesn't work for everybody, and it doesn't feel like the right answer to some people, and that's okay. But for the people who are really, really struggling out there, who don't understand why their kid won't sleep, it may just be because the kid doesn't know how to yet.
Right. And when I speak to pediatricians, or, I do sleep seminars for moms groups, or, just speak to groups of moms, I always make sure I say that I don't think that everybody needs to be my client.
Yep.
I just want the parents that want help and need help to know that it exists, because, people like me and you who are in the, the community with, kids, we know about these resources, but every single day I meet someone that says, what is a child sleep consultant?
Yeah.
And, I really want to change that. And I'm very passionate about, not only being, helping children have healthy sleep habits. I'm also passionate about maternal mental health, because it is just, I was in a very dangerous situation. I was in a community where, I didn't have a spouse at home, and I didn't have family nearby, and my son literally did not sleep. And the only professionals I see are, when I go to doctor's appointments. And so, I always want to make sure that they know to tell parents that if you need this resource, that it is available and it does exist, because it's really desperate situation for some people.
Yeah. And I watch the people sometimes that get really, really, really angry about sleep training. And I just kind of want to ask them, like, okay, so you don't feel like the baby and the mom should be separated. That's fine, whatever. You think we should need to attend to needs all the time. But what use is a mom to a baby if the mom is not getting more than an hour or two of uninterrupted sleep at night?
Right.
Like, and you're talking to a mom sometimes that's on the end of their first year and they still haven't gotten more than an hour or two of interrupted sleep because the baby is in this cycle where it needs the mom constantly.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I really, truly think that we need to look at this with like kind of a wider scope in the sense that like, this isn't like black or white. This is, used when it needs to be used. And I think it's definitely a great thing to learn, just like potty training, just like everything, your kid has to learn how to recognize what's happening in their body.
Right. And I think it's also really important to mention that I get calls from moms all the time. And a lot of them will ask me, what is your method? Like as if I only have one method that I think everybody should absolutely use. And this is the only way to go about it. And I just want to say, if you're speaking to somebody and they only have one option, I would just, explore other options, other avenues, because it's not a sleep consultant's job to tell you what to use. It's our job to be trained on all the methods and to meet the parenting style to the method.
Because I assume that this is going to be different for a breastfeeding mom versus a formula feeding mom, or after solids have started or something like that.
So it's actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So that's a big misconception. So breastfeeding, weaning your child, none of that needs to happen to get your child on a healthy sleep schedule. You can still nurse at every feeding. You can still nurse, until whatever age you want to nurse. You just have to separate the eating from the sleeping. And that's whether it's formula, it's breast milk in a bottle, it's nursing, it's solids. We just have to separate the eating from the sleeping.
So just to hit on a couple of things in terms of tips that you have. So you mentioned that the sleep space should be dark and you recommend white noise.
Yes.
Anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. So the temperature for a child 12 months and under should be between 66 and 71. Okay. And then also the Pediatric Association is now suggesting that there is a fan added into every sleep environment for a child 12 months and under, and that it significantly reduces the risk of SIDS. So it's not that the fan needs to be blowing on the child for, comfort. It's that we just want it somewhere in the room helping the airflow.
So talk to me about, I feel like every single time I either watch Shark Tank or open Facebook, there's another swaddle thing that has been invented that is supposed to help your baby sleep, whether it's weighted or whether the arms are in, arms are out. I said, I've got 6 kids, so I'm like, I'll try this, I'll try that. But then I just am kind of like, it's going to happen when it happens at this point. But tell me about those.
Yeah. So I think that swaddles when your child is in the newborn stage, absolutely you need to swaddle your baby. I get the moms that say, well, my baby hated the swaddle. No. Your baby needs to like the swaddle. There's many ways we can go about practicing. There's the super swaddle technique. There's video. I mean, there's lots of ways we can get you to swaddle your baby, and it is really important. Once they are able to roll, then obviously we can't swaddle their arms anymore, and so that might be during the newborn stage. But once they reach that 16-week mark or the 4-month mark, we want to take their arms out of the swaddle anyway. I think a good transition swaddle is the Merlin's Magic Sleep Suit after their arms have been swaddled swaddled in. And then I also really like...
Is it just the weight of that one? Is that what you like about it?
It's the weight, or? Yeah, because their startle reflexes are still so immature that the weight of that one is helpful. But also then, when they roll or there's a lot of movement, I just like parents to transition to the Zippity Zip, which, you mentioned Shark Tank, that was on there. Yeah. And it's a really great product, though, because the child has full range of motion, right? So they can stand up, crawl, move. It doesn't restrict them in any way, but it's like a wearable blanket. Yep. And so you don't have to worry about them being, cold. And then it also helps with that startle reflex. And then, of course, sleep sacks are helpful down the road when we have toddlers, when they start to try to climb out of their crib. That's something that we can use. So if you put a sleep sack on your child and they're trying to climb out of their crib, that's one strategy. It's not all of them. But a lot of parents will do that to prevent that for a couple months as well.
I haven't had a climber. Caroline just now.
You haven't had a climber in 6...
I have not had one climber. I've not had one that has climbed out of their crib and come to find me. Well, I should really knock on wood because Caroline did it for the first time the other night, but she'll go. I really truly think it's just setting that expectation and getting it all right. And now she's like number 5 and she sleeps in our closet, which we like made into her room, which is like right off of our bedroom. But we break all of the rules at this point. Like she has like her crib is full of toys, not unsafe toys, but like stuffed in. Like, I don't know. I won't even go in there because I'm sure I'll get emails about how unsafe it is. But she's 2 now. But anyways, she just climbed out for the first time. But as long as like everything is good when she goes down and she goes through her routine, which I think is probably another thing we should talk about, she knows it's time to go to sleep, and she goes to sleep and she stays in there and she sleeps with a poppet, which I'm sure nothing is supposed to be in the crib with her. But at 2, I feel like we're getting to the point where she can have something. She sleeps with a poppet, and if she wakes up, she plays with her poppet. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Don't judge me. But
well, that's good. It's good for her to have a comfort item in there.
Absolutely.
That works.
Some people have like stuffed animals. My child sleeps with a little poppet thing.
But what you brought up is really important because a lot of parents will at that point get rid of the crib.
Yeah. No. They're not climbing out. I'm not getting rid of the crib.
Yeah. But even if, and then when they do climb out, we need to troubleshoot because you don't want a child younger than 3 in a toddler bed or a regular bed if you can prevent it. So a lot of parents will say to me, what age do you recommend transitioning out of the crib? And I say at least age 3 or until they ask for it. We really don't need to transition them before.
And I feel like sometimes that's America then, the consumerism of America coming into like, oh, I need to make the big girl room or I need to make the big boy room. Let's, transition. No, like I have reached the point where if sleep is happening, I'm not messing with it.
Right.
Like
we're
good. We figured out what works in our family and we're good. You're going to stay in a crib until it's not time for you to be in a crib anymore.
And that leads me back to a question you asked earlier about, the products and I call them gimmicks that are out there that are supposed to help children fall asleep. What I can tell you is there is no product, there is no tangible object, there is nothing out there that is going to, there's no app, there's no music, there's no story that's going to be read that is magically going to teach your child self-soothing skills. So, please don't buy into that. It's just not helpful, and it's misleading. And the more that you try things that don't work, the harder it is to do things that actually do work. So just stay away from things like that seem to be too good to be true because they probably are.
So talk to me about routine.
So a routine is really important. So I call them soothing routines. And what I explain to parents is that a child's soothing routine is really what they associate with sleep. And it's what we use so that it can be either parent, it can be a babysitter, it can be a nanny, a grandparent, it doesn't matter. Because what your child associates with sleep is those steps. So, you would go into a space in the room. I have my clients create what I call a cuddle corner. They go into the cuddle corner, they do the exact same steps every day and every night, and then they get laid down in their crib awake. Okay, so that's another big misconception out there. The term drowsy but awake, that is just for newborns. Okay, we are not putting our child down drowsy. Once they're out of the newborn stage, your child should always go down awake. Once they are showing you they are drowsy or that they are tired, they are now overtired. So a lot of parents will say to me, but he didn't look tired, so why would I put him down now? Because I want your child to be in their crib in the dark room with the white noise on and the door shut when those sleepy cues hit. Mm-hmm. I don't want them to hit before we even start the soothing routine, because then by the time it happens, we're too late.
Something I've learned too, and this is not based on anything, but other than experience at this point, if you're not ready to sleep train or to have your baby away from you, you can still start those routines. Mm-hmm. And that's what I start to do as soon as I can kind of like come up for air after those first couple of months. Mm-hmm. Like Matthew and I, we take a bath every night together. Which is kind of fun because he was born in our bathtub. So it's like, it's cute, you know? Mm-hmm. And, but then he gets his pajamas on and he gets to hang out with his siblings and we all kind of watch TV in our room and stuff. But once he knows when I swaddle him, I don't have to nurse him down anymore. So like we're at 4 months and like that was my goal. Is like by the time we get to 4 months, he needs to know kind of when I swaddle him and I hold him in a certain way, that's his cue to start learning how to settle himself down. So there's little things that you can do if you're not ready to take your baby, if you do, co-sleep or have your baby somewhere that's not in a crib. You don't have to just start there. You know what I'm saying? Like
absolutely.
You absolutely can start teaching them the small skills and the small signs that, hey, it's time. Like we're going to turn the lights out now. And maybe we're going to put the white noise on and I'm going to swaddle you and I'm going to hold you and I'm going to teach you, hopefully, that, we can go to sleep without milk. We can go to sleep. I know you're full because I fed you after the bath, but you can go to sleep without maybe that sucking reflex or reflex going on. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And it's really important that's what a lot of my newborn package is, because you cannot sleep train in the newborn stage. But it's all about teaching parents the healthy habits you want to aim towards and the unhealthy habits we want to steer away from. So that's an important part of it. And then also, what I was saying before about the method, a lot of people think that sleep consultants, we only use cry it out or we promote cry it out. And I want people to know that that's really not the case at all. You don't really even need to hire a consultant if you're going to use straight cry it out or extinction. And my son did not sleep, and everybody, neighbors, relatives were telling me, just put him in his crib and let him cry. And I just thought, no, there has got to be another way. And that's why I refused to do it and ended up, on the path I was on. So I want people to know that there is going to be crying, but it doesn't mean that you have to be separated from your child when they're crying.
I mean, and I still remember like when we finally, with our first one, decided we had to do something, like decided we were not going to be able to survive if we didn't teach him a little bit how to sleep on his own. And it didn't. He's still to this day is our oldest and will be the first one in bed if I were to let him like in bed with me. Like he's just who he is, like, and we didn't really encourage it at a young age. We waited until he was over a year and stuff like that. But anyways, I still remember sitting on like his bedroom was like right next to the stairs. And I remember sitting on the top stair and I was crying and he was crying and I was watching my phone and I would go in at I don't even know what our interval was at that point, but it was like night 1 or 2. And I would go in every 4 or 5 minutes. I don't even remember. And like, we would just sit there and we would cry together and I would hold his hand and I would rub his back. And I don't know if you do touch at that point or whatever, but,
yeah, definitely.
It was so hard, but by night 3, he had it.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable. And it didn't feel like this super like traumatic separating event that I thought it was going to feel like.
Right. Absolutely. And when I, the sleep consultant that I hired and used, she said to me, because I chose a method where I was going to be in the room with my son the whole time. And she said, think of yourself as a cheerleader there to show your son support as he learns to put himself to sleep.
Yep.
And that really resonated with me. I was like, I can do that. I can certainly do that. And so that's what I did. I sat in the chair. I offered comfort, as he figured it out. And so, I know he's not hurt because I'm looking at him. I know he's not scared because I'm right here. And I know that if he could talk, he would say, I'm exhausted and I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so since he can't talk, he cries.
Yeah.
And I've just got to be here to support him until he figures it out. And that really helped us. And so, what I can tell families is, if you take nothing else out of this, if you hear me say nothing else, the main concept here is you have to teach your child to go from awake to asleep while lying on the mattress. But that doesn't mean you need to be separated. You can have your hand on them. You can be shushing. You can be stroking, patting. I mean, I was halfway in the crib with my son, hugging him. I mean, he could stand at that point. And so laying them down, you can lay them down up to 5 times, but after that, it's a power struggle and you're not going to win. So I was just leaned over as he was standing up, shushing straight into his ear, heavy stroking, and eventually he kneeled down and eventually he laid down. And it does take a long time, night one at bedtime. It does. And a lot of clients, wouldn't get through night one if it wasn't for like my one-to-one support right there in text message, live support, because it is hard. But once you get through that first step, it's almost shocking as to how quickly it comes together.
I don't know. It's so funny. Like, I think at the beginning when I was like a first time mom, like I thought that there was such an emotional connection between sleeping and needs and stuff. And I think what I have learned through parenting is that it's just a biological thing that kids need to learn. And like, teach them when you're ready to teach them. If you want to wait until they're 2, teach them when they're 2 and you're at the end of your rope. But you can also teach them much earlier and change kind of the dynamics of what your household looks like.
Absolutely. And I get, really desperate phone calls from parents, that are in a really bad situation. And, especially during the pandemic, that was just, emphasized even more. But a lot of people are almost ashamed of the sleep situation in their house. They don't talk about it a lot. And it's a bad situation. You've got a lot of parents sleeping at shifts, sleeping in different rooms, playing musical beds in the middle of the night, with kids that are 8, 9 years old because they never learned that skill. And so, it can carry on into poor sleep habits.
And it's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of because they get there by just trying to be the best parent that they want to be.
Absolutely.
And they get there by wanting to be close to their kids and meet their kids' needs, which is why this is such a hard topic to talk about because, I don't know. It's just because people are so passionate about the fact that they're supposed to be there for their kids. And I think part of maybe being there for your kids is also to teach them a skill that they're going to use for the rest of their life.
And what I found, just talking to parents over the years is a lot of times I find like stay-at-home moms will almost feel like that's their job. And that if they can't figure it out, that they must be doing something wrong. And I just, I'm the kind of person or mom or business owner that is happy to delegate things. And so I know not all moms are like that, but it's just like hiring a lactation consultant if your child is not latching properly, or a physical therapist if they're having trouble with their milestones. And so sleep often gets put on the back burner, but it really should not. It is essential to cognitive development. It's essential to our emotional regulations. There's so many benefits from it. And if our child wasn't eating properly, we would be going through all the steps, hiring all the people we needed to hire to make sure they were eating.
And I think it sometimes doesn't come up until they enter school too, or they enter preschool, or their behavior. Like, because I have a couple that I can know, like by breakfast time, if they slept well the night before, and know whether it was going to be a bad day or not, or be a harder day or not, simply based on their behavior. And then I have some who can be up every hour if they need to for whatever reason, and they keep it together throughout the day. So it's also based on, kids and their personalities. So why does this fail for some people?
Good question. So it fails because not all of the elements are lined up and in place at the same time, and they're not being consistent. So a lot of parents will say, well, we're going to start with night sleep, or we're going to start with naps. Well, how is a 6-month-old supposed to understand that during the day, mom or dad are going to rock me to sleep and lay me down, but at bedtime, they're going to expect me to be laid down awake and to put myself to sleep. And then when I wake up throughout the night, they're going to expect me to do that again. But then tomorrow morning when I take my first nap, I don't have to do that. They'll rock me. That's, I mean, think about that. That's what we're expecting a 6-month-old. That's not going to work. So it has to be consistent across the board. And what I tell parents is, don't start the process until you're ready, because once you start, you don't want to stop, and so it's the lack of consistency, the lack of, support or a solid foundation in your sleep plan. So if you've created it on your own, and a night doesn't go well, you start second guessing yourself, you start changing the plan. So, just the lack of support, lack of confidence in your own plan. And then, just not doing all of the things that need to be done in order to see success at the same time. So controlling the timing, not having any sort of a sleep association, having that sleep environment set up properly, and just being consistent with it.
Yeah. As much as it is normally a quick process, I would add to that list as well with the consistency thing, making sure that you don't have anything in the weeks or months that follow. Like I know that I'm going away, and I'm still a few months out from even trying with the little guy. But I know that I'm going away, and I know that he's going to sleep with me when I go away, because that's what he does. But I would never try and start right now transitioning him to his own sleep space, knowing that I'm going to go away and he's just going to get cuddles all night again.
Right. And I was laughing when you said that, because like my program's 2 weeks. And so I always tell parents, like, please just give me my 2 weeks. Like, you just paid this money for this. Like, give me my, and then they'll be like, oh, we forgot we have a weekend camping trip on Thursday. It's like, great. Can't wait to navigate through that. So you want to just, put in that work. And once you have a child that has a solid sleep schedule, has natural melatonin producing, right? Because we've all heard of people taking melatonin, giving it to their kids. What sleep training does, or sleep changing, is it gets their natural melatonin to produce. So once we have a child who has their sleep hormones are regulated, they're balanced between day and night, and they have a solid schedule, they're the ones that are able to be flexible and miss a nap, or have a late bedtime, or have a special occasion where things are off, and they're going to be fine the next day, where it's the child that doesn't normally have that. If things are thrown off, it's harder for them to get
it's
back
funny
on track.
Though, because like I think about life with my first, and we could go anywhere and do anything, because he would nap in a carrier, and he would nap on me, and he would sleep with me, and it was great. We never had to bring like a pack and play or whatever anywhere. So in some ways it was great, but he was a loose kid. Like I would have to go to bed with him. Like if we went on vacation, I'd have to nurse him down, and I would have to lie there with him, whereas now with our kids, by the time they reach like the age of 1, like even the grandparents' brains have kind of had to be trained to the point where like we need someplace for that baby to sleep, which is just so different than the first, especially 1 and kind of 2, because they would just sleep, wherever. But it was also, I was a slave to nap time and to bedtime and everything like that. So it's just interesting, there's changes that happen and stuff. So this has been awesome. What else? Where can people find you? What else do you want us to know?
So I have a website, and then I'm locally here in Richmond, but I do travel a lot. So I do in-home consultations. And when I say in-home consultation, that's just the time where we're going to talk about, the plan and come up with the plan together. So I can do that virtually or in the home, and then we work together for 2 weeks. And after that 2 weeks, I send you your follow-up packet, and then you guys are good to go. I also do in-home support. So in addition to the sleep training package, some parents will hire me to spend that first night in the house, first couple of nights, first weekend, things like that. I also do training, and so I train nannies, I train daycare staff, things along those lines. And so my website is bigskylullaby.com. We have a Facebook page, Big Sky Lullaby. We have Instagram, and so we have a pretty good online presence.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I love wrapping this up. I loved what you said about the fact that, like, you know, you wouldn't think twice about hiring a speech pathologist or, you know, a physical therapist or a therapist for yourself. You know, like, there are people out there that have studied and are experts on so many parts of motherhood that we all feel like we have to do alone and that we have to walk through by ourselves. And if I've learned anything in 10 years of being a mom, it's that inviting those people into your life only teaches you and only supports you more and makes motherhood so much more joyous and so much, in some ways, feels so much easier.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
So thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for teaching moms and kind of meeting them where they are and, you know, offering them the support that they need.
Yes. And thank you for giving me the platform to get the word out there to the moms that are really struggling.
Yeah. Thanks.
It's important.